Hi, we're going to start multiplying and dividing signed numbers. Again, you've seen this, so this is a review. Maybe you've seen it presented in a different way, so just try and glean some new information if you're comfortable with this. Let me get started. When we're multiplying positive numbers, we've done that since we learned our multiplication facts. Anytime you multiply two positive numbers together, you get a positive answer. Okay, two positives, positive times a positive is positive times positive equals positive. All right. So if you have 3 times 4, that's a positive 12. If you have 6 times 10, that's a positive 60. Okay, that's what we have been doing ever since we've been learning math facts. Okay, another thing that we've done for a long time is multiplying by 0. And regardless of what number you multiply by 0, if it's a real number, then multiplication by 0 is always 0. If you multiply a positive number by 0, you get 0. If you multiply a negative number by 0, it equals 0. If you multiply a fraction or a rational number by 0, it's 0. If you multiply an irrational number like the square root of 2 or pi or anything irrational, and you multiply it by 0, you get 0. Any real number multiplied by 0 gives you 0. All right, now I want to take a look at multiplying positives times negatives. We're going to multiply positive and negative numbers. And I'm going to start by demonstrating a pattern so that it'll hopefully help you remember the rule. All right, I'm going to start by multiplying 5 times 3. That product is 15, a positive 15. Positive 15, all right? Now watch, 5 times 2, I get a positive 10. What's the difference between 15 and 5? Well, we've subtracted 5, right? Okay, I want you to pay attention to how each multiplication goes down by 5. 5 times 1 is 5. Okay, we went down 5. This answer is 5 more than this answer. But think of it this way. 5 times 1 is 5 less than 5 times 2. We just remembered and reviewed that 5 times 0 is equal to 0. Notice that 0 is 5 less than 5, right? So now we want to multiply 5 times negative 1. Well, if we were to follow the same pattern, if we subtract 5 from 0, this answer is going to be negative 5. All right? Negative 5 minus 0 is equal to negative 5. Okay? 5 times 2, that's going to be negative 10. Why? Because I have to subtract 5 from negative 5. Negative 5 minus 5 is equal to negative 10. Again, negative 10 minus 5 is negative 5. I don't know where I was going there. Okay, again, each one of these products is 5 less. So you see, this is the key to the transition. Whenever you cross over from multiplying two positives to multiplying the positive and negative, the sign changes because you're subtracting off 5 more. And this is negative 15. All right? So when you multiply opposite signs, you're always going to get a negative answer. Multiplying opposite signs always gives you a negative answer. All right, so now let's follow a pattern and look to see what happens when we multiply two negative numbers together. All right, we're going to start by looking at negative 4 times positive 3. Now, these are opposite signs, and we just learned that they are a negative answer, right? Negative 12. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Notice the difference here is a positive 4. Negative 8 is 4 more than negative 12. Right? Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Notice that this difference is 4 more. Okay? Negative 4 times 0, well, anytime you multiply a number by 0, you get 0. Notice that 0 is 4 more than negative 4. So what do you expect this answer to be? I expect this answer to be 4. 4 more. And that's negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4. It's 4 more than negative 4 times 0. Negative 4 times negative 2 is a positive 8. And again, it's 4 more. Negative 4 times negative 3 is positive 12. Again, it's 4 more. So whenever you multiply two negative numbers, it's always going to be positive. Okay? So hopefully you've noticed you've got kind of two groups. You have the product of same sign is positive. So this is positive 7 times positive 2 equals positive 14. Negative 7 times negative 2 is equal to a positive 14. Okay? As long as the two numbers have the exact same sign, your answer is going to be positive. The product of two numbers with opposite signs is always negative. Always negative. All right? So, if I have negative 7 times positive 2, I get negative 14. If I have positive 7 times negative 2, I get negative 14. As long as one of them is negative, the answer is negative. Opposite signs give negative answers. Okay. Multiplicative inverse. Okay, I'm going to start by helping you remember the additive inverse. The additive inverse, we learned that in lesson 1.4. Two numbers that add to 0, they're opposites of each other. Positive 3 plus negative 3, they add to 0. Positive 6 plus negative 6, they add to 0. Negative 2 plus positive 2, they add to 0. Additive inverses add to 0. Multiplicative inverses, I'm going to highlight that. Multiplicative inverses, they multiply to a positive 1. So let's name some pairs of multiplicative inverses. Okay? Well, 2 times 1/2. This is the reciprocal of 2. Okay? Reciprocals always multiply to 1. If we check that, we have 2 times 1 is 2, and 1 times 2 is 2. That gives us 1. Okay? 10 times 1/10. Okay? I multiply straight across. That's 10 over 10, and that gives me 1. Negative 3 times negative 1/3. That gives me 3 over 3 is equal to 1. Multiplicative inverses always have the same sign. Always have same sign. Okay. Opposite reciprocals, which we've learned about, they have opposite signs. Multiplicative inverses or reciprocals have the same sign. Notice here that 0 doesn't have a multiplicative inverse because we can't multiply by 1 over 0. Okay. Division is nothing more. Remember how subtraction was nothing more than adding the opposite? Well, division is nothing more than multiplying by the reciprocal. Division is nothing more than multiplying by the reciprocal. Okay? So, by definition, for any real number x and y, x divided by y is the same as, equal to, x times 1 over y, as long as y is not 0. Y cannot be 0 because we cannot divide by 0. Okay? All right. Notice, and this is where a lot of students get confused, 0 divided by y equals 0, but y divided by 0 is undefined. Okay? 0 divided into y groups, each group gets 0 pieces. But y things divided into 0 groups, you can't do that. You can't do that because at a minimum you're going to have one group with y things. Okay. Now, since dividing is really just multiplication by a reciprocal, you get to have the same, this is nice, the same sign rules for multiplication and division. Okay? If you're dividing two numbers with the same sign, it's positive. If you're dividing two numbers with opposite signs, then it's negative. Okay? It's important to realize equivalent quotients. Negative x over y is going to have the same value as x over negative y, which equals to just a negative pulled out in front, x divided by y. It's the opposite of x over y. Okay? Negative x divided by negative y is exactly the same and simplifies to positive x over positive y. When you're going to simplify rules, remember to use the order of operation, okay? These parentheses imply multiplication. So I could write this as negative 9, hold on, let me change my pen. Negative 9 times 2 minus negative 3 times 2. All right, what do I do first? I multiply first. Negative 9 times 2 is negative 18. Minus negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. All right, now I'm subtracting a negative number. So what does that become? Negative 18. Subtraction of a negative becomes plus, add the opposite of negative 6. And my answer is negative 12. Okay. Why don't you try B and C, and then we'll come back and do D together. All right, welcome back. I'm going to do my multiplication first, and I have negative 6 times negative 2. That is, negative times a negative is a positive. 6 times 2 is 12. Right? Minus 3 times negative 4. Right? 3 times negative 4. I have a positive 3 and a negative 4. So this becomes a negative 12. Now again, I have a double negative right here. Subtracting off the negative, I'm going to add the opposite. So I have positive 12 plus a positive 12. And my answer is 24. Okay? All right. On example C, we took negative 2 minus 3. I have to do what's inside the parenthesis first. Right? So this is negative 5 times negative 2 plus a negative 3. This is negative 5 times a negative 5. A negative times a negative gives me a positive, and 5 times 5 is 25. Okay, now I'm going to do D with you. I'm going to simplify my numerator separately from my denominator. All right, so I have 5 times negative 2. That's a positive times a negative is a negative, and 5 times 2 is 10. All right, minus 3 times 4, minus 12. Now I'm going to simplify in here. 1 minus 6, well that is 1 plus a negative 6. So 1 plus a negative 6 gives me 2 times a negative 5. Okay. Negative 10 minus 12, negative 10 plus a negative 12 over negative 10. So I get negative 22. When I'm adding two negative numbers, I get more negatives. Negative 22 over negative 10. All right, negative divided by a negative becomes a positive. That's 22 over 10. And I'm going to divide top and bottom by 2 because they're both even. So I'm going to continue over here, and I'm going to get 12 over 5 as my final answer. Remember the word evaluate? That means plug in values and chug out an answer, okay? When asked to evaluate an expression for given values, remember to put parentheses around substituted negative values. This will minimize your errors. Then follow the order of operations. Evaluate the following if x is negative 1, y is equal to negative 2, and m is equal to negative 3. So we're going to plug in first. So I have 3, and I'm going to put in parentheses, so I'm going to get nested, and that's okay. Plus 4 times negative 2, okay? And then I'm going to multiply that by negative 2 times a negative 3. All right? I'm going to work on this one first. 3 times negative 1, that's negative 3, plus 4 times negative 2, that's negative 8. And then negative 2 times negative 3. Negative times a negative. That becomes a positive 6. All right? Negative 3 plus 8 is negative 11 times 6 equals negative 66. Right? Let's try B. Now, we're going to be squaring a negative number. So think through that. You're going to want to say it's a negative answer, but whenever you square a negative, you get a positive. Okay. I have to apply my exponents first. So I get 2 times negative 1 squared is 1 minus 3 times negative 2 squared is negative 2 times negative 2. That is a positive 4. So I get 2 minus 12 equals negative 10. Four times y squared plus x divided by m. All right, so we're going to plug in. We're going to simplify the top, then simplify the bottom, and then reduce at the very end. So I have 4 times negative 2 squared plus a negative 1 over, and it's just negative 3. Okay? All right, I have to do my exponents first. Negative 2 times 2 is 4, so that's 4 times 4. Plus a negative 1 all over a negative 3. I have to do my multiplication first. 4 times 4 is 16. plus a negative 1 all over negative 3. 16 plus a negative 1. Okay, so that gives me 15, and I have more positives, so it's a positive 15 divided by a negative 3. Ooh, I ran out of room. Equals negative 5. A positive divided by a negative gives me a negative answer. We just learned to review that today. All right, here is the homework assignment that we're going to be working on in class. So come prepared. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate you watching the video.